Welcome to another week of Simply Debbie Sue's Southern Whispers. Let's get right into the introduction of this week's story. In the hush of late autumn, when the prairie wind begins to whisper of winter and the fields lie bare beneath a silver sky, there's a kind of stillness that settles deep into the bones. It's in that stillness where the hope flickers like a flame and faith is tested by frost that our story begins. The Lantern in the Window is a tale of quiet resilience of a woman named Clara Belle McKinney who keeps a light burning, not just in her cabin, but in her heart. Set in the early 1900s on the Dakota Prairie, this story invites you into a world where molasses cookies carry comfort, scripture is spoken like song, and strangers become family around the fire. It's a story for anyone who's ever waited in silence, prayed in the dark, or kept a light on for someone they love. And it's a reminder that even in the coldest seasons, grace can arrive on snow-covered boots and hope can be kindled with a single flame. So settle in and let the wind blow outside and the lantern glow within. This story is called The Lantern in the Window. The wind had a bite to it that year, sharp and early, like winter had decided to arrive before the pumpkins were done ripening. Out on the edge of the Dakota Prairie, nestled between two cottonwoods and a stubborn patch of wheat, sat the homestead of Clara Belle McKinney. Clara Belle was 23, widowed young, and known for two things, her molasses cookies and the lantern she kept burning in her front window. Folks said it was for travelers, but Clara knew better. It was for her brother Samuel, who'd gone west to chase gold and hadn't written in over a year. The lantern was her way of saying, "You're still welcome. You're still loved." Late fall brought longer nights and harder chores. The wheat had come in thin, the hens were laying less, and Clara's pantry shelves looked more like prayer requests than provisions. Still, she kept the lantern lit, even when the oil was low, even when neighbors whispered that she ought to give up hope. She wrapped herself in her late husband's flannel coat and walked the perimeter of the land each morning, whispering scripture like a lullaby to the frostbitten earth. Psalms 27 was her favorite. "The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear?" Inside, the cabin smelled of cinnamon and cedar. Clara had a habit of baking when she was anxious. Kneading dough gave her something to hold on to when everything else felt uncertain. She'd hum old hymns while the bread rose, her voice soft and steady like a ticking of the grandfather clock her daddy had built. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills and the wind howled like a hymn, Clara heard a knock at the door. Not Samuel, but a stranger. He was thin, wrapped in a threadbare coat, and carried a satchel that looked older than he was. "Ma'am," he said, voice trembling, "I saw your light. I've been walking for days." Clara didn't hesitate. She brought him in, fed him soup, and gave him her late husband's coat. They sat by the fire, and the man, his name was Elias, told her he'd lost everything in a train accident. No family, no home, just a worn Bible and a heart full of questions. Clara listened. She didn't preach. She just offered warmth, molasses cookies, and the kind of silence that feels like grace. Before dawn, Elias asked, "Why do you keep that lantern lit?" She looked out the frosted window. "Because someone might need it, and I reckon hope's like fire. It only dies if you stop tending it." Elias stayed through Thanksgiving, helping with chores and fixing the barn roof. He read scripture aloud at supper, and Clara found herself smiling more than she had in months. They built a new chicken coop together, chopped wood, and even carved a wooden cross to hang above the hearth. One snowy morning, Clara woke to find Elias outside, brushing snow off the lantern. He'd added a small wreath of prairie grass and dried berries around its base. "It's not much," he said, "but it feels like Christmas." That afternoon, another knock came. This time, it was Samuel. He looked older, worn, but his eyes still held that spark. "I saw the lantern," he said, voice cracking. "I didn't know if you'd still be here." Clara pulled him into a hug so tight it could have stitched a broken heart. "I never stopped waiting," she whispered. That winter, the McKinney homestead became a place of refuge. Elias stayed on as a farmhand. Samuel helped rebuild the porch. and Clara kept the lantern burning, now not just for one soul, but for anyone who needed reminding that light still lives in dark seasons. Neighbors began stopping by more often. Some came for cookies, others for prayer. Clara started writing little notes of encouragement and tucking them into baskets of bread she'd leave on porches. "The Lord is near to the brokenhearted," one read. "You are not forgotten," said another. By spring, the lantern had become more than a symbol. It was a ministry, a beacon, a promise. So the reflection of this story is, on the prairie, hope doesn't shout. It flickers. It waits. It welcomes. Clara Bell's lantern reminds us that faith isn't always loud or easy. Sometimes it's a quiet glow in the window, a bowl of soup for a stranger, or a heart that refuses to give up. So if your season feels cold, if your prayers feel unanswered, keep the light on. Someone might be walking toward it, and maybe, just maybe, you're the lantern in someone else's storm. I hope you enjoyed that story. Come back next week for another one. Thanks for listening.